Dear audiences, welcome to our Gerardo Retreat House, Real Life Stories Radio. It's our honor to give you our most sincere greetings in the love of Jesus Christ, Mother of Perpetual Help. May the love and peace of the Holy Trinity be with you and with your family. This program is run by Father John Liu Ngọc Quỳnh, who is one of Hanoi Redemptorists, CSSR, and his Gerard Retreat House. This radio is a broadcast with the purpose of sharing our experiences, discoveries, and confirmation about the problems related to mental illness, spiritual illness, vocational discernments, religious life, marriage life, and the ways that God has been leading us. New stories are broadcast and updated continuously on radio and website svcongiao.net at 9 p.m. on Sundays. We hope it will bring you to the new perspectives, new hope, new directions, and new saving road about human mysteries, illness, sorrows, and healings. Especially, these stories are really useful for those who are suffering from the same problems as we have experienced and healed. Dear audiences, surely each of us must bear one or several fears. Some people are afraid of snakes. Some are afraid of worms. The fear of thunder, screams, other fears of heights, and many other fears. Today, Real Life Stories Radio brings you a story about fear from a member of Gerardo Retreat House with the title Ghosts and Horrifying Screams. Hopefully, through this story, you will have a new perspective on the strange truth in the story that seemed to be difficult to find a solution. And we are wishing it also becomes a key for someone to open the mysterious door so that it may free themselves as the girl in the story.
The mountainous area where I was born has a reputation as the hometown of many intelligent and beautiful girls. All young women who reach marriageable age get married in turn. I also wish to become a bride in an exquisite wedding dress in my own wedding. But ironically, how can I get married when I'm even unable to live independently? I'm afraid of the darkness and I always need someone beside me every night and stay with me step by step. That's why I chose the religious life, as I thought, with the presence of many people and my God in the congregation, I would no longer be afraid of darkness. It was that thought that brought me to Gerardo Retreat House, so that I would have the best preparation for my religious life. Here, I was directed 2 times in the retreat house by Father John Liu Ngọc Quỳnh. I remembered my first days in the retreat house. I witnessed many people suffering from different strange diseases, and they had been cured. Some of them immediately ran out when they just heard a scream. Some just heard about worm and started itching all over. It's really strange, isn't it? If I couldn't see it with my own eyes, I didn't believe it. Like many others, I came here with a desire to be healed, the dreaded disease of darkness fear. With the guidance of Father John, I look into my memory to fight my own fear, to face, to remove it. During the past 20 years, I've been overwhelmed by the fear of darkness. It always haunted me, making me panic even when the sunrise came. I've lost the peace of my soul. I was unable to focus on studying since the fear occupied my whole mind. I was sad and disappointed with myself. I worried about the future ahead. Every time I walked alone in the darkness, I felt like someone whom I called a ghost was following me. The faster I ran away in fear, the faster that ghost chased me. It was like a beast about to grab, about to eat me alive. Even when I was studying alone in the daytime, I always had to guard against at the back to see as if someone was there. At the age of 20, the age that human is mature enough to take care of others, but for me, I had to rely on my mother, cling to her even when going to bed or going to the toilet. It's ridiculous, but that was the truth about myself. Many times I cried for my cowardice and the feeling that I was useless. I cried for others' disparaging words at me. Your physical appearance is an adult, but your mind seems to be like a child. What can you do when you always live in fear for everything? I cried and tormented myself. I blamed God. After 3 months of the first retreat stage, I was very happy that I was no longer afraid of the darkness. But Father John said to me, "You haven't been completely healed because the cause of your fear hasn't been found yet." Nevertheless, I still came back home in peace and happiness. But that happiness didn't last long. When I came back to my hometown, a disease that had been long forgotten since I was in grade 8 reappeared. I remembered when I was 15 years old, whether I slept at home or anywhere else, I shouted at midnight. My screams made my relatives and even my neighbors shudder with terror. My mother was so worried that she took me to the hospital, and the doctor told me that I was faint-hearted, and if I took tranquilizer according to the prescription, I would definitely be healed. So my mother asked me to take tranquilizers for 2 years. With more than 100 tranquilizers, the frequencies of the screams was reduced. Then I screamed just a few months later. By the grade 12, I no longer shouted. But after the first retreat stage, the strange scream was shouted with more frequency than before. The fear of disease once again covered me and my whole family. I called Father John for his help. I was reassured and encouraged by him, and I courageously entered the second healing retreat. After 1 year with the effort to investigate my mind to find the cause of that scream, I was almost exhausted in vain, and the therapeutic result still seems to be zero. I was so tired and frustrated that I wanted to give up. The only thing I could do at that time was to pray to God and then keep trying to force me to look for the cause of my fear of darkness and screams. When did it appear? But everything was still unknown. I became more and more stressed. The stress was so serious that many nights I couldn't fall asleep. And one day, I felt my head was about to explode. I fell asleep and had a terrible dream. I went to the local community center with some of my friends. As long as I reached the yard, a group of people pointed guns to us. All of us scattered. I was so scared. I hid behind the wall and stared at the yard. But strangely, in the yard, there were still 2 friends standing arm in arm to avoid bullets. Suddenly, I was extremely terrified when a gun was pointed at my head by someone standing right behind me. From the front porch, 2 friends still stood there and they beckoned me. I courageously ran to them. Reaching the place they were standing, I grabbed my friend's gun and fired at the enemies, but the gun had no bullets. I rushed to them, punched, and fought the enemies fiercely against them. In the blink of an eye, all of them, including the enemies and my 2 friends, disappeared, leaving me alone with the only masked man facing me. At that time, I felt myself exhausted and saw the risk of being defeated by him. I just made the sign of cross and prayed to God to strengthen me. Surprisingly, I defeated the masked person. But another obsession surrounded me when I saw his face in hundreds of mirrors on both sides of the road. I was so panicked that I ran really fast to get out of that terrifying face. But the faster I ran, the more mirrors I saw. I almost got lost in the labyrinth and couldn't find a way out. I collapsed. Even when I woke up, my heart was pounding and sweating profusely. I was so scared and told my dream to Father John. He mused a bit and said to me, "The cause of the scream wasn't from you, but you reflect the scream of the one closest to you." Then he called my mother directly to embrace his influence. Indeed, my fear of night and screams of terror are all derived from a curse. Even though my mother didn't want to mention it, she eventually dared to confide to Father John with the hope that he would help to heal me. My mother said that when I was 5 years old, she, my brother, and I slept together on a bed. At that night, my father was away. The outside door was locked, but the bedroom door wasn't. At midnight, as we fell asleep, my uncle sneaked in, intended to harm my mother. He robbed my mother's body. She startled and shouted in 3 loud voices in extreme fear and panic. Then she held the man's hand tightly and shouted, "Who?" He replied, "Me, your uncle." Then he continued to struggle with my mother before running into the night. My mother was still so panicked that she ran off to my grandparents' house nearby. It was not until 2 hours later that she calmed down and dared to come back home. After listening to my mother's story, Father John explained to me about the root of my horrifying scream. When my mother shouted at that quiet midnight, I was too young, so I completely recorded that scream in unconsciousness, and it is unconsciously reflected. When I laid down, it's easy to make me shout while I slept. Father John also told me the specter that clung to me for the past 20 years was the image of my uncle who had struggled with my mother at the night I accidentally witnessed right after waking up because of her screams at that night. When I found the cause, I was also shocked to know that I was the victim, not the subject of that first shout. Yet I've never made that assumption before. Looking back on the arduous journey of fighting cause of fear, I realized that psychoanalysis is not all I need, but thanks to God's blessing, and with the intercession of Mother prepared to help, and the guidance of Father John, I found out the profound origin of this horrifying fear. I cried a lot in happiness to thank God to eternity. Since I found the cause, my fear of ghosts and horrifying screams inside has significantly decreased. Father John let me have some practice in a short time, and I am almost no longer upset. I am now confident enough to work alone in the dark night, and I no longer scream at night either. I say goodbye to Father John and the retreating house of Gerardo and come home in peace. Now, my husband and I are living in peace and happiness. Dear audience, looking back at my strange disease and the treatment method Father John healed me, I'm more convinced what he told me. People are always controlled by their memories about the past, regardless of in dreams or when awake, but few people are aware of the fact that they are being controlled by those memories. Therefore, it takes time to control yourself, to get out of the grip of illness. Moreover, it takes great sacrifice and courage to be back to the past, to bravely confront and eradicate memories, so that people are liberated. At the same time, those who want to know their vocation must necessarily be cured of the previous diseases.
Thank you for listening to the radio Gerardo Retreat House Real Life Stories. We wish this hearty sharing will be useful for you, and it's possible that someone in the same situation will also have a chance for being healed. Dear friends, if you feel this story gives you something interesting or useful, please click the subscribe button to update next broadcast. If there is any suggestion or comment for our program, please send us by email nhatinhgierado@gmail.com. We wish you a new week full of joy and peace of Jesus Christ. Thank you so much and see you again on the next program.